Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Has this ever happened to you? Situation presents itself, and you look at it and you say, why? Why is this happening? Why do I have to deal with this? Why does life have to be so challenging? Well, maybe there's a reason, and we're going to talk about that today. Learning through loss. We've all suffered it in some way, shape, and form. If you haven't, congrats, you will at some point. It's called life. There's grieving within life, and I'm not painting a negative picture here, but the reason for this, and also why some of us may ride in the victim mentality. We're going to talk with somebody today. Great to have him back. It's been a while for this gentleman, but he is somebody who practices hypnotherapy, mind transformation, puts the pieces together, helps us understand what's going on. Noah James is back on the program. It has been a while. How have you been?
You know, it has been great. A lot of learning, a lot of blessing as the company is continuing to burgeon and grow. So I'm thankful for that. It always brings challenges with it, but those are the good challenges to have, certainly.
You've been through challenges in your life and life changing. But through that, you've learned a lot. And I believe, based on the conversations that we've had, it changed your path in life. Do you want to share your story with us?
Well, yeah, and I'm not going to get too micro in all of this, but I really feel a pulling on my heart to share a little bit about me, because I think there's a lot of people out there, like myself, that have had some pretty traumatic things happen to them and felt like perhaps those traumas have taken them out of the rhythm of what their life could have been or should have been. And I'm here to say that that's probably not the case. You're probably right where you need to be, irrespective of the traumas that have taken place in your life. It's not what happens to you, as we've heard before. It is, I apologize for that, it is how you respond to those traumas. And so today, I'm going to tell a little bit about my story. I'm one of those persons that would probably frustrate a good career guidance counselor. I mean, at 16, I was traveling with Leonard Bernstein in Europe, singing opera and singing as an avocation before college. And I take that back. I was actually singing opera when I was in college. I was singing just Festival of Three Cities with Leonard Bernstein in Europe. I had a good voice. And then I sang on television on old-time gospel hour with Jerry Falwell, kind of a duck or pucker statement, I suppose, for some. But nonetheless, great experience traveling in these music fields. Graduated with a music degree, went on and got a graduate program in opera, turned chairman of music at Trinity Baptist College many, many years ago, built a school of music there.
Wow.
Traveled as an artist and got involved in all sorts of things. Ended up as a stockbroker for Shearson Lehman Brothers many, many years ago. And then from there, I branched out and became a registered investment advisor, even started my own hedge fund. Well, along comes 2008, and everybody remembers that time. Up until that time, everything that was happening in the financial markets seemed to, I had the Midas touch. I had gold mines in the Philippines. I was financing Pixar motion pictures off the West Coast, but a ton of subprime mortgages. Wow, wasn't that clever at the time?
I haven't heard that term, by the way, in a long time.
Yeah, it almost buried me. So I was doing a lot of really exciting things, and I had trading programs that were doing 20, 30%. And we were trading more IBM and CBS convertible securities at that time than probably anybody else in the world. I don't know that for sure, but we had it going on. But I got really out over my skis, and my hedge fund was leveraged 10 to 1. And when the stock market crashed and they turned off short selling, I lost everything. In a matter of about 5 hours, I lost millions of dollars. I mean, millions of dollars. I was devastated. I was totally destroyed. Well, the aftermath of all of that, everybody was trying to find a culprit for having lost money in the market. This is the same time that Bernie Madoff had made the news, and you
Yep.
may well remember that. And in my state, I was looked at as the villain who had, in similar fashion, followed after Bernie Madoff, which was crazy. It certainly wasn't anything close to that. Nonetheless, I was forced literally to take a plea deal, something that was really painful for me because I was forced to make a choice between a short-term incarceration or a long-term incarceration. So the net effect of that was that I lost everything. I lost my family. I lost my wealth. I lost my credentials that I'd worked a lifetime for. I lost my respect. I was broken. I was put into a minimum security kind of work facility for 10 months, but each night I was in a quad with militant Muslims that wanted me dead. And I'm not making a judgment statement against militant Muslims per se. I'm merely saying that I was a Christian and I didn't swear and I didn't do the things that other inmates were apparently doing. And so it got around that I was probably a federal informant and placed there to find information out. Well, it turned out that the best friend that I had in prison was the prison psychiatrist. You know, I was already involved with hypnotherapy and talking over with him remedial solutions that could be used for inmates when they got out. And I taught in prison. And then, you know, one day I was walking along and outside on the path getting some exercise. I was reading incessantly at that time. And there was a book written by Hagen. I think it was Copeland, maybe it was, but I think it was Kenneth Hagen. And somehow I got this feeling in my spirit that the Lord was saying, "You ready to get out of here?" And it wasn't an audible voice, but I just got that feeling. And I said, well, yeah. And I sensed that there was this kind of inner dialogue that was happening where he said, well, did you learn what you needed to learn? Well, no one, I mean, incarceration is a great place to learn. You know, we've heard it said, you can get better or you can get bitter. I didn't get bitter. I remember taking a criminality class when I was in prison there, one of the first classes, and the instructor said, I want you to raise your hand if you're a father. And so a number of the guys raised their hands. I raised my hand, and he says, you're not a father. None of you are. Because fathers don't come to places like this. You guys are low life, blank, 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 blank. I was devastated. I was so broken in that place. You know, even telling this story, and I haven't told this story, but in those environments, in the stillness of the night, a man goes through a rethinking. Now, how do you get out over your skis when everything is going great and everything you're touching is turning to gold? You get arrogant, you get clumsy, you get a lack of discipline. You just seem to be going in the motion and everything flows. Well, as a result of that environment, I did change. My life changed. We talk a lot about the words in the Christian context of repentance. Yeah, I repented. I repented for my arrogance. I repented for my greed. I was making a lot of money at that point. And so the Lord said, well, I think you have learned. I'll get you out of here. Now, this sounds crazy to the average person listening to some story like this, but it was true. Rather, within a few weeks, I was released. Yikes. So I got out, but the sorrow had just begun, Steve, because when I got out, I felt like there was a scarlet letter emblazoned on my shirt, and that everybody that I met on the street knew that I had been locked up. My family, even at that point, they were so wounded and devastated from what had happened to me, you know, television cameras and news media, their humiliation. And what was written about me was scandalous, but a lot of it just not true. So I have a lot of compassion. Side note, a lot of compassion for people who are in Hollywood and the tabloids that have things written about them. A lot of it is just sensationalized, and a lot of it is not true. But nonetheless, So when I got out, I'll try and bring this up to where we are today. And I was approached then by the Department of Corrections. They wanted me to work with helping prisoners who left prison to transition into the workforce, which was seemingly ironic. So I got credentialed in that way. I started my practice and started working with people. And I think one of the things that I've really learned, and this is really what I want to talk about, I want to use a biblical reference because it paves the way for how this integrates into our natural lives. We've heard this story. We've seen on Broadway, Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat. Many of you who have been churched in times past, you've heard the story about Jacob, also called Israel, who had 11 children, the youngest of which was Joseph. He was the arrogant, egotistical, and the youngest favorite of Jacob, at which point his behavior alienated himself from his brothers. They eventually did him ill by throwing him in a pit. But this happened because God gave him a dream, and in the dream, God said that your brothers are going to bow down for you. Whoa. Well, so of course, he shares that with his brothers. They throw him in a pit, tell daddy's dead, sell him off to a slave caravan that's traveling by, and he's led to Egypt, where he serves in a household for a high official. We all know the story that since he was a good-looking guy, that the woman of the house wanted more than just the usual servant's responsibilities from him. And so he runs out of his coat, and they throw him in jail for having attacked her physically. For the next 35 years, he labors in jail, and he is mistreated because God continues to give him wisdom and insight, and people there that are in prison take the insights that he has and merchant them, monetize them to get out of prison. Finally, a day comes when the Pharaoh has a dream that nobody can interpret except for Joseph. He interprets, he's elevated to a place of second in charge. And we all know the story that now there's a famine coming, so they accumulate. This is the Cliff Note version of this, by the way. The God gives them another dream that there's going to be a famine coming, so store up all the grain. They store up all the grain, and lo and behold, because there's no grain left in the world except what's stored up there in Egypt, his brothers come and bow down before him, not recognizing that it's him. Now, that's not really the reason that I'm telling the story. Here's the point. There is a verse there that I never really understood before, Steve, and it was, I think it's in Genesis 50. And it says the way that I interpret it, what the enemy meant for evil, God has meant for good. Now, it's really hard to wrap your mind around that statement. So if you had talked to Joseph in those 35 years laboring in the prison, he ended up running the prison. That's where he learned his administrative capacities. How's it going with you and God? I think he had been a bit bewildered. And if he was pretty honest, there may have been times he was just really angry, feeling like, well, I feel like I've been passed over. I mean, everybody's getting out of here except for me. And I'm wrongfully accused. But then I grasped the truth of this. And the truth of it is that God is the author and the finisher of our faith. We do not understand what a good thing and a bad thing is. Now, the Bible says that because of the sovereignty of God, he can turn what is meant for evil into good. But I would dare go another step. Is it even possible that God in his omniscience knew that when he gave him the dream, that meaning to Joseph, that Joseph wouldn't be able to handle it? And by virtue of that, a cascading series of events would befall him such that his life would live in a very tortured state for many, many years. And only at the end would he be elevated to prominence. Now, the outworking of all of those circumstances saved the remnant of Israel, the 12 tribes of Israel that we know of today. So is it possible, Steve, and this is the question that had to come to, that we, because we have this internal wiring, which we talked about before, which is to eschew anything painful, and to pursue pleasure. So it's all about stay clear of pain and pursue pleasure. And if you look at from an anthropological standpoint of human nature, that's really what it's all about. Mankind goes about trying to figure out how not to hurt and how to have fun. The Epicurean society is endemic of all of that philosophy, and I think we're living in it today.
I have to ask you, after all of this, Noah, how did you remain positive in prison? And you said, and I just heard the statement the other day again. It's coming up again, and you said it. Better, not bitter. How did you not be bitter, or were you? How did you navigate through that entire journey and keep some sense of positivity, or was that all lost?
I think there was a lot of bewilderment. I mean, when everything is taken away from you and you don't have an identity, there is this crucible of change that can happen in that environment. I have a relationship with my Lord. I know that I'm a born-again Christian. So I had a relationship with him, and I actually was able to talk with him. So in that environment, there's great solace to having somebody larger than yourself saying that I still got you, even in the midst of all this, even in the midst of all that sorrow. I will tell you, there is still a sorrow in my heart today.
And that all being said,
I have a sorrow in my,
do you feel this happened for a reason?
I do. And, I sat in here with my clients, and they tell, we deal with trauma on a daily basis. One of the things that God taught me was that, back to this verse, what the enemy meant for evil, God meant for good. I know that if I had remained large and in charge of the hedge fund, making hundreds of thousands of dollars, that I wouldn't be doing what God called me to do today. I know that the sorrow that I went through, the devastation of losing everything, gave me the courage to do, well, you can do a lot of things boldly when you have nothing to lose. I have no reputation. I have nothing to protect. All I had was God and these ideas that would fill my mind about what was possible to help people heal in a way that hadn't been conceived of before.
Where did that moment come from?
Sessions,
You're in prison. Life was great. Tons of money. Fantastic. Now you're in prison. Where did you get the epiphany, maybe the aha moment in thinking that I am going to help others?
I don't know where that came from. I think that it was born within me. I think a lot of my identity is I've always been about how can we do this better? So when I go through my classes, I think, this isn't helping anybody. It really isn't. So I think, well, there's got to be a better way to do this. I'd sit down with a prison psychiatrist. What if, and we do this? What if we did this? How would that work? Well, I think that would be marvelous. Well, this is what I experienced in hypnosis. Why don't we go to the source of the problem instead of trying to deal with the 5% of the mind? Why don't we go to the 95%? So I don't know, Steve. I think that the Lord just stayed with me and still gave me a sense that there is more than what I was experiencing, and that there was a reason for why it had happened. So getting back to this now, so I'll sit with a client that talks about the trauma that's happening, and what he taught me in a protocol that I developed, not I, but God, is that where the enemy has tried to destroy you, God has planted a vineyard that has fruit of righteousness that is the antithesis to what the enemy tried to steal from you. What does that mean? Well, let's just say that you were physically abused, sexually abused. Well, somewhere in the midst of all of that horrific pain, God planted something in the garden of your life that if you can give assent to it, the fruit of that benefit will counteract what the enemy meant to destroy you with. And it's a revolutionary concept. So I can take people who have all these terrible things. Well, what has God given you that you're not aware of that would be just the opposite of all of that? What would the opposite of that be? And then they realize, I was so involved with my pain, I couldn't see what the change has been. So I tell them, I said, you know what? Had I continued, I wouldn't be sitting here before you today. And do I have abilities and technologies that can set you free from the sorrow and pain that you're in right now? Absolutely. And they can walk out and have walked out changed. And I have wept with them. Not tears of mourning, but tears of joy. And they have got a perspective, oh, my soul, if this hadn't happened to me, I wouldn't have been placed in the position that I had to change. So pain is the provocateur of real inward transformation, if we allow it to be. And there is no pain that cannot be conquered with its antidote. And the fruit of that means that we rise to a level that we would never have been were we never had to experience those events.
So many questions here. My gosh. And we're running out of time, but like what comes to my mind immediately is that seed that was planted. How did you know to water that, i.e., doing what you're doing now? I don't know where you saw that vision with all that chaos and everything, that was, I don't want to say behind you because it was still next to you at that point. It always will be in many regards, but knowing that there was something else for me. And also, it sounded like you said what you were doing, hedge fund, all of that, wasn't what you were supposed to be doing. Do you believe that?
Oh, absolutely. One of the things we try and concentrate on here is, and I'll tell you a quick story. How much time do we have left here?
Like a minute.
Like a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're trying to help people find out why God put them on the planet. What's your identity? I know what I am. I'm a worshiper. I'm a warrior. I'm a way maker, and I'm a healer. Because of that identity, I know that I flow out into life in hypnotherapy in all of those regards. So I teach people to first find out who they are to make sure that they're in keeping with what God called them to do or what they're good at. Because a person with great social versatility can do a great variety of things, but it's not what they're intended to do. So I found what I was intended to do through the pain of my life, and I'm changed as a result of it. And I want to say to those who are listening to my voice today, you may be bewildered by all of the things that have saddened you and caused trauma in your life, but be encouraged. Those things, I heard a pastor once say, Reverend Schuler once said, turn your scars into stars. And I thought it was strange at the time, but now I look at it in context of my life and I go, absolutely.
Right.
You can turn what was a trauma into a triumph.
It's all those cliches that you hear growing up. I find them to be true now. All of these things, and just what you said, things happen for a reason. Finding your purpose in life. And it sounds like you needed to go through this, based on what you're saying, to find your purpose, which is now to help and heal. And for somebody to really pick up on your genuineness and everything, you walk the walk. You went through a lot. It's not like, well, I took a couple of classes. I'm a hypnotherapist and I'm going to help people right now. No, no. Way more to it than that. Amazing.
But how exciting. And I want to leave them with this thought. I really want you, if you're hearing my voice, it's because it's providential. Things don't happen by accident.
Agreed.
However you've tripped into this recording or this video, I want you to know something. There is hope, and there is more than what you're living right now. And it can happen. And take the step to initiate that process.
Awareness equals change. You can't change unless you're aware. You can't be aware unless you figure out what's going within. How do you do that? Hypnotherapy being one of those. I can speak personally for that. Fantastic. It's the wake up. You will make that connection. How do we connect with you?
Well, the name of my company is Mind Transformation, Inc., 375 Collins Road in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. The telephone number, if you want to call, is 319-777-1059. If you want to reach me personally, you can call me on my cell phone. I'll answer night or day, 319-640-6504. We can do business together, therapy together, virtually, any place in the world. So if you need help, reach out, take that step Force yourself to push through the reticence, knowing this, there is help and it isn't difficult and can happen so quickly.
Mindtransformationinc.com. Do I have that right?
Yep, all one phrase, mindtransformationinc.com. 319-777-1059. I hope to hear from you soon. Thank you once again, Steve. Appreciate the opportunity to tell my story to the audience today.
We've gotten together a number of times. This is the first time you really shared this story. I was completely unaware, and I appreciate your transparency in all of this. It's amazing. Honestly, very amazing. I am blown away knowing where you were, where you went, where you are. But bottom line is faith. And if you want to connect that to religion, that's fantastic. But faith in yourself, faith in knowing that there's more ahead. It's not, all this heaviness in back of us. Appreciate it. Looking forward if we get a chance to get together. Great stuff today.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be right back. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Let's go inside the mind of a 10-year-old.
I should have worn those earrings today. I like those earrings. Gabby has those awesome earrings. I need to ask her where she got those, but that's just what she would want me to do. I'll have Michaela ask her for me.
Buckle up, Sarah.
Yeah, but then Michaela will be like, why don't you just ask her yourself? That's just like Michaela.
Sarah, buckle up.
Michaela's such a great name. I wish I was called Michaela. There's like a dozen Sarahs in my class.
Hey, we're not hitting the road until you buckle up, honey.
Oh yeah, seatbelt. I forget sometimes because my brain is like busy, I wonder if there's pizza at school today.
Sometimes it can be tough to get through to your kids, but it's not impossible. Always make sure they're wearing their seatbelts, even on short drives. Remember, you have the keys, you have the power. Never give up until they buckle up. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council. Visit safercar.gov/kidsbuckleup for more information.